Hey everybody, welcome to a super exciting story that's gonna grab you and not let go. Before we start, I need you to do something fun. Drop a comment down below and tell me. Have you ever had to stand up for something that was totally yours? Maybe a toy, a spot in line, or even your favorite seat at school. Oh, and if you love stories that twist and turn like a roller coaster, smash that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our awesome tailies. Alright, let's jump right in. Imagine a super cozy neighborhood called Willow Creek. The grass is bright green, the houses look warm and inviting, and the sun seems to shine every single day. Kids ride bikes down the street, dogs bark happily, and neighbors wave at each other with big smiles. It's the kind of place where everybody feels safe and happy, like they're part of a big family. And right in the middle of Willow Creek lived a woman named Sarah Thompson. Now, Sarah wasn't the kind of person who stood out in a crowd. If you walked by her, you might not even notice her at first. She was friendly, always saying hi with a little wave, but she didn't make a big deal about herself. She was quiet, not loud or showy. Sarah had a small bakery in the middle of town, a cute little shop with a pink sign that said Sarah's Sweets. Every morning, way before the sun came up, she was in that bakery, mixing dough, baking bread, and decorating cupcakes with swirls of frosting. Her hands were always dusted with flour, and she smelled like sugar and vanilla. Customers loved her because she always smiled, even when she was tired, and her cookies were the best in town. Sarah's house was her favorite place in the whole world. It was a two-story home with bright blue shutters on the windows and flower boxes bursting with red and yellow blooms. The front porch had a comfy rocking chair where Sarah loved to sit with a cup of coffee, watching the world go by. That house wasn't just a place to live, it was special. Sarah had worked so hard to own it. Years ago, she saved every penny she made at the bakery. She stayed up late, baking extra cakes for birthdays and weddings, and she skipped buying fancy clothes or going on vacations. All that hard work paid off when she finally bought her house, every single bit of it hers. No bank owned it, no one could take it away. To Sarah, that house was her safe spot, her big win, her dream come true. Every morning, Sarah would wake up early, make her coffee, and step onto her porch. She'd breathe in the fresh air, listen to the birds chirping, and feel proud. Her neighbors liked her, but they didn't know much about her. They saw her as the nice baker lady, always busy, always kind, but not someone who caused a stir. To them, Sarah was just Sarah, plain, simple, and easy to overlook. And that's exactly what made her such a perfect target for someone who was up to no good. Across the neighborhood, in a big, shiny building with way too many windows, there was an office. This wasn't a fun place like Sarah's bakery. It was the office of the Homeowners Association, or HOA for short. The HOA was a group of people who made rules for Willow Creek. They decided things like how tall your grass could grow, what color you could paint your house, or if you could put up a basketball hoop. Most folks in Willow Creek didn't love the HOA, but they followed the rules to avoid trouble. The HOA liked to act like they were in charge of everything, and their president, a man named Greg Larson, loved that power most of all. Greg was the kind of guy who walked around like he owned the whole world. He wore fancy suits, drove a shiny car, and always had a smirk on his face like he knew something you didn't. His hair was slicked back and his voice was loud, booming through the neighborhood meetings like he was giving a speech to a huge crowd. To Greg, Willow Creek was his kingdom and he was the king. He made sure everyone knew it too. If someone broke an HOA rule, like planting a tree without asking, he'd send them a mean letter or even a fine. A fine is when you have to pay money for breaking a rule, and Greg loved handing those out. But Greg wasn't just bossy, he was sneaky. Behind his big desk in that fancy office, he was making plans, bad plans, plans that would hurt people like Sarah. See, Greg didn't think much of Sarah. To him, she was just a quiet baker, someone who wouldn't fight back. He saw her little house with its blue shutters and thought, that's an easy one to take. He didn't care that Sarah had worked years to own it. He didn't care that it was her safe place. All he cared about was his own greedy ideas, and he had his eyes locked on Sarah's home. What Sarah didn't know, as she sat on her porch that sunny morning, was that trouble was coming. It wasn't loud trouble like a storm or a fire. It was quiet, sneaky trouble, the kind that creeps up when you're not looking. While Sarah sipped her coffee and waved at a neighbor walking their dog, Greg was in his office, signing papers and making calls. He was setting up a plan to take Sarah's house, and he thought it would be so easy. Why? Because he thought Sarah was weak. He thought she was just a baker who'd never stand up to him. He thought she'd be too scared or too confused to fight back. Oh man, was Greg wrong. Sarah might have been quiet, but she wasn't weak. She might have seemed ordinary, but there was something special about her, something Greg didn't see coming. Deep down, Sarah had a spark, a fire that burned when someone tried to take what was hers. She worked too hard, fought too long to let someone like Greg push her around. But on that morning, as the sun shone and the birds sang, Sarah had no idea what was about to hit her. She didn't know that Greg and his HOA were plotting something awful, something that would shake her world and test her strength. Let's go back to Sarah for a second. Picture her on that porch, her coffee mug warm in her hands. She's wearing her favorite sweater, the one with little flowers stitched on it. Her hair's tied back in a messy bun, and there's a tiny bit of flour on her cheek from baking muffins earlier. She's smiling, thinking about her day. Maybe she'll try a new cupcake flavor or plant some tulips in her garden. Her life feels good, steady, like everything's in place. The neighbors walking by wave, and she waves back, her smile growing. This is her home, her neighborhood, her happy little corner of the world. But across town, in that cold, shiny HOA office, Greg's smirk is growing too. He's sitting at his desk, a big stack of papers in front of him. His pen scratches across a page, signing his name with a flourish. He leans back in his chair, looking out the window at Willow Creek. To him, this neighborhood isn't a home, it's a game, and he's winning. He thinks about Sarah's house, picturing it in his head. Nice place, he thinks. Too nice for someone like her. He doesn't know Sarah's story. He doesn't know about the years of hard work, the late nights, the dreams she poured into that house. All he sees is a chance to get what he wants. Greg's plan is simple but mean. He's going to say Sarah broke HOA rules. He's going to make up lies about her house, say she didn't pay some fees or fines. Then he's going to use those lies to take her home away. He's done it before to other people in Willow Creek, and he's never been caught. Why? Because most people are too scared to fight the HOA. They see Greg's fancy suit and hear his big voice, and they give up. Greg's counting on Sarah doing the same. He thinks she'll read his mean letter, get upset, and walk away. He thinks she's an easy target, a pushover, a nobody. But here's the thing about Sarah. She's not a nobody. She's kind, sure, and she's quiet, but she's also tough. Life hasn't always been easy for her. Before she opened her bakery, she had to work hard to get by. She learned how to stand up for herself, how to keep going even when things got rough. And that house, it's not just a house, it's proof of everything she's done. Every brick, every window, every flower in her garden is a piece of her heart. No way is she going to let someone like Greg take it without a fight. As Sarah finishes her coffee and heads inside to get ready for the day, she's humming a little tune. She's thinking about her bakery, her customers, her plans for the weekend. She's got no clue that Greg's plan is already in motion. Somewhere in that shiny HOA office, a letter is being typed up, a letter that's going to turn Sarah's world upside down. It's a letter full of lies, signed by Greg himself, and it's about to land on her doorstep like a bomb. But don't worry, this story's just getting started. Sarah's about to find out what Greg's up to, and when she does, things are going to get wild. Greg thinks he's so smart, so powerful, but he's got no idea who he's messing with. Sarah's not just a baker, she's not just a quiet neighbor. She's someone who knows how to fight for what's right, and she's about to teach Greg a lesson he'll never forget. So what do you think's gonna happen next? Can you imagine getting a letter saying someone's trying to take your home? Stick around, because this story's got twists and turns that'll keep you hooked. And don't forget to tell me in the comments, have you ever had to stand up to someone who was being unfair? Hit that asterisk button if you're rooting for Sarah, and let's keep this story rolling. It all began with a letter, and not the nice kind. Sarah Thompson was in her cozy kitchen, sweeping tiny crumbs off the counter after baking a batch of her famous chocolate chip cookies. Her little house in Willow Creek was quiet, the only sound the soft swish of her broom. Then she saw it, an envelope plain and white, slipped under her front door. Sarah thought it was just another annoying note from the Homeowners Association, or HOA. Maybe they were mad about her rose bushes growing too tall or her mailbox needing a new coat of paint. She rolled her eyes and picked it up, expecting something silly. But when she ripped open the envelope, her heart sank like a stone. The letter was typed in cold, black ink, and the words hit her hard. It said her house was in default. Default? That meant she hadn't paid something, right? Sarah's forehead wrinkled as she read it again. She paid everything. Every bill for lights and water, every tax, every single HOA fee. She was always on time, always careful. Her bakery made enough money to cover it all, and she kept her receipts in a neat little box just to be sure. Sarah kept reading, and the letter got worse. It said the HOA had taken immediate action because she didn't follow their rules. The last line was the worst of all, like a punch to her stomach. New tenants will occupy the property starting tomorrow. Tenants, people moving into her asterisk house, the one she'd worked so hard to own. Sarah's hands started to shake, the paper crinkling in her fingers. She bought this house years ago, paid for every bit of it with money from her bakery. No bank owned it, no one else had a claim. This had to be a mistake, it just had asterisk to be. Sarah grabbed her phone, her heart thumping like a drum. She dialed the HOA office, her fingers fumbling over the buttons. When the phone picked up, a voice came through, smooth and sharp like a snake hiding in tall grass. It was Greg Larson, the HOA president. "Ms. Thompson," he said, his voice slow and fake kind, "I'm afraid you've been negligent. The board has the right to protect our community." Negligent? Sarah's cheeks got hot like she'd been slapped. "I've paid every fee," she said, her voice louder than she meant. "I've never missed a single one." But Greg just laughed, a low, mean chuckle that made Sarah's skin crawl. "Check your records, Ms. Thompson," he said. "You owe fines, lots of them." Fines? Sarah's mind spun like a top. She'd never gotten a single letter about fines, not one. She kept every piece of mail from the HOA filed away in her desk. If there were fines, she'd know about them. "What fines?" she asked, her voice shaking now. But Greg's tone stayed cold, like he was talking to a kid who didn't get it. "You'll see," he said. "The tenants move in tomorrow. I suggest you cooperate." Cooperate? Sarah's jaw dropped. Cooperate with what? Someone taking her home. She hung up the phone, her breath coming fast and shaky. She stared at the letter on her counter, Greg's name signed at the bottom in big, bold letters. That name made her stomach twist. Greg wasn't just wrong, he was up to something bad. Sarah could feel it, like a storm cloud hanging over her house. He wasn't just making a mistake. He was planning something mean, something unfair, and he thought Sarah wouldn't fight back. Sarah sank into a kitchen chair, the letter still in her hand. Her house was her everything. She'd spent years saving for it, working late nights at her bakery, mixing dough until her arms ached. She'd skipped buying new clothes or going on fun trips, also she could own this house free and clear. It wasn't just walls and windows, it was her safe place, her dream. And now Greg Larson, with his fancy suit and smug voice, was trying to take it away. For what? Some made-up fines. Some lie about her being negligent. It wasn't fair, and Sarah's heart burned with anger. But Greg, oh, he was feeling pretty good about himself. Across town in the HOA's shiny office, he leaned back in his big chair, a smirk on his face. The office was all glass and steel, with a huge desk that made him feel important. Greg loved being in charge. He loved making rules, sending letters, and watching people jump to obey. To him, Willow Creek was his playground, and he was the boss. He'd seen Sarah around, waving on her porch or carrying trays of cupcakes to her car. To him, she was a nobody, just a quiet baker who'd never caused trouble. That's why he picked her house. He thought she'd be easy to push around. Greg's plan was sneaky and mean. He'd made up those fines, knowing Sarah had never seen them. He'd written the letter himself, saying her house was in default when it was. He'd even arranged for new people to move in, thinking Sarah would be too scared or confused to fight. Greg had done this kind of thing before, and it always worked. He picked someone quiet, someone who didn't ask questions, and he'd scare them into giving up. Then he'd take their house and make money off it like it was a game. And every time he got away with it. But Sarah wasn't like the others. Sure, she was shocked, sitting there in her kitchen with that awful letter. Her hands were still shaking and her eyes stung with tears she wouldn't let fall. But deep down, something else was stirring. Sarah wasn't just a baker. She wasn't just a nice neighbor who kept to herself. She was tough. Life had taught her to be. Before she opened her bakery, she'd had to work hard, fight for every step forward. She learned to stand up for herself even when it was scary. And this was her home. No way was she going to let Greg Larson, with his mean laugh and fake fines, take it away. Sarah stood up, her chair scraping the floor. She folded the letter and tucked it into her pocket, her jaw tight. She didn't know exactly what Greg was up to, but she wasn't going to just cooperate. She wasn't going to pack her bags and walk away. This was her house, her life, and she'd fight for it. Greg thought she was weak, but he was about to learn something big. Sarah Thompson was no pushover. She was smart, she was strong, and she was ready to find out what was really going on. As Sarah grabbed her keys and headed to her car, her mind was racing. She'd go to the HOA office herself, look Greg in the eye, and demand answers. She'd check her records, dig through every piece of paper she had. Something told her this wasn't just a mix-up. Greg's voice, that chuckle, the way he said cooperate, it all felt wrong, like he was hiding something. Sarah didn't know what yet, but she was going to find out. And when she did, Greg Larson was going to wish he'd never messed with her. The next morning, Sarah woke up to a loud noise she'd never forget. It was a deep, rumbling sound, like a big truck. She jumped out of bed and peeked through her bedroom curtains. Her heart stopped. A moving van was parked right in front of her house. A young couple was unloading boxes onto her green lawn, laughing and chatting like they belonged there. They carried lamps, chairs, and even a big plant, acting like Sarah's house was their house. Sarah's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. This was her home, her safe place, and these strangers were moving in. Sarah threw on a sweater, her hands shaking, and marched outside. The cool morning air hit her face, but she barely noticed. "Excuse me," she said, trying to keep her voice calm even though she wanted to yell. "There's been a mistake. This is my house." The couple stopped, looking confused. The man held up a piece of paper. "We signed this yesterday," he said. "It's a lease for this house. We paid for a whole year already." Sarah's jaw tightened so much it hurt. She glanced at the paper and saw a name scrawled at the bottom, Greg Larson. That name again, the HOA president. Her stomach twisted. Paid who? Greg, the HOA. Her head spun as she watched the couple carry a big couch through her front door. Sarah wanted to scream, to tell them to get out, but the couple looked so clueless. They didn't know they were part of something awful. They weren't the bad guys Greg was. Sarah took a deep breath and turned away, her sneakers stomping down the street. She was going to the HOA office right now. She had to face Greg and make him fix this. Her house wasn't for rent. It was hers, paid for with years of hard work at her bakery. No way was she letting this happen. The HOA office was all shiny glass and cold air, like a place where fun went to hide. Greg was waiting behind his big desk, his suit neat and his smirk sharp like a knife. Sarah burst in, her voice shaking but strong. "You can't move people into my house," she said, her hands clenched. Greg leaned back in his chair, folding his arms like he didn't have a care in the world. "The board has authority, Ms. Thompson," he said, his voice smooth and mean. "You didn't pay your fines. We had to act to protect the neighborhood." "Fines?" Sarah snapped, her eyes flashing. "What fines? I've paid everything." Greg's smirk grew and he slid a stack of papers across the desk, his eyes gleaming like he was enjoying this. Sarah grabbed the papers and looked at them. They listed fines for things she'd never done: unapproved fence height, too many Christmas lights, wrong color paint on the shed. Lies, every single one was a lie. Sarah had followed every HOA rule. She never put up extra lights or painted anything without asking. Her blood boiled hot and angry, but Greg just sat there, grinning like he'd already won. He thought she'd give up, pack her bags, and walk away, but Sarah wasn't like that. She left the office, her mind racing like a car with no brakes. Those fake fines, Greg's smug face, the strangers in her house, it was too much. She couldn't stay in her home with that couple living there, acting like it was theirs. So with a heavy heart, Sarah packed a small bag with clothes and her favorite coffee mug. She moved into her friend Lisa's guest room, a tiny space with a creaky bed. Every day when Sarah drove past her house to get to her bakery, she saw the couple's car in her driveway. It felt like a knife twisting in her chest. Her cozy house with its blue shutters and flower boxes didn't feel like hers anymore. But Sarah didn't cry. She didn't sit and feel sorry for herself. She got to work. Late at night, when the world was quiet, Sarah went to the library. She sat at a big table surrounded by stacks of books and papers. She read every HOA rule she could find, her eyes scanning the tiny print. She dug through public records, looking for anything that could help. She called old friends from her bakery, people who knew people, asking questions about the HOA. Bit by bit, like putting together a puzzle, Sarah started to find things, shocking things. The HOA, led by Greg, had done this before. 3 other families in Willow Creek had gotten letters just like Sarah's, saying they owed fines they'd never heard of. Those families lost their homes, just like Sarah was losing hers. The HOA took their houses and rented them out to new people, making money off the lies. Every time Greg's name was on the papers, his signature big and bold. Sarah's hands shook as she found more proof, bank records showing thousands of dollars going into accounts tied to Greg and his friends on the HOA board. This wasn't a mistake. It was a scam. A big, mean, steal-your-home scam. Sarah's heart raced as she wrote down everything she found. She kept her discoveries secret, not telling anyone, not even Lisa. She knew Greg was watching her, waiting for her to give up. At an HOA meeting, Sarah went on purpose, letting Greg see her. She wore old clothes and slumped her shoulders, looking tired and sad. Greg's eyes lit up when he saw her, his smirk bigger than ever. He thought she was done, beat, and ready to quit, but Sarah was playing a game of her own. She wasn't tired. She wasn't giving up, she was planning. Here, something Greg didn't know about Sarah: she wasn't just a baker. Years ago, before she opened her shop, Sarah had studied law. She never finished her degree because she needed to work and pay bills, but she learned a lot. She knew how to read tricky papers, how to spot lies, how to fight smart. That knowledge was like a secret weapon hidden inside her, waiting for the right moment. And now, with Greg trying to take her house, that moment was coming. Sarah kept working night after night, her notebook filling with notes. She found names of other families Greg had hurt. She found more bank records, more fake fines. Every piece of proof made her stronger, like adding bricks to a wall. Greg thought he was so clever, so powerful, but Sarah was building something he couldn't stop. She was quiet, sure, but she was fierce. Every time she drove past her house and saw that couple's car, it hurt, but it also made her more determined. She wasn't just fighting for her home anymore. She was fighting for everyone Greg had tricked. As Sarah closed her notebook one night, the library dark and quiet, she smiled a tiny smile. Greg thought he had her beat, but he was wrong. Sarah was just getting started, and soon he'd find out how strong she really was. The big day had come, the annual HOA meeting in Willow Creek. It was the most important event of the year, and the community center was bursting with people. Every chair was taken, and neighbors stood along the walls, chatting about new playgrounds, pool rules, or maybe a new stop sign. The room buzzed with excitement, like a school assembly before a big announcement. Up at the front on a little stage stood Greg Larson, the HOA president. His tie was perfectly straight, his suit shiny, and his voice boomed through a microphone, loud and proud. He talked about community pride and keeping things fair, sounding like a king who ruled everything. To everyone in the room, Greg looked untouchable, like nothing could stop him. But in the back of the room, sitting quietly in a folding chair, was Sarah Thompson. Her hands held a thick folder stuffed with papers. Her heart was racing, thumping so loud she thought everyone could hear it, but her face was calm, her eyes steady. She'd been waiting for this moment, planning for weeks. This was it, her chance to show everyone who Greg really was. Sarah took a deep breath, her fingers tight on the folder. She was ready. Greg finished his speech, flashing a big, fake smile like a politician on TV. He leaned into the microphone and said, "Any questions?" He expected the usual stuff: someone complaining about too many cars parked on the street or asking about new flowers for the park. The room got quiet, everyone looking around, wondering who'd speak first. Greg's eyes scanned the crowd, his smirk saying he had everything under control. Then Sarah stood up. The room went silent, like someone hit a mute button. Heads turned, eyes wide, staring at her. Sarah, the quiet baker who never made a fuss, was standing tall in the back. Whispers started, soft at first, like a breeze. Greg's smile twitched just for a second, like he wasn't sure what was happening. His voice came through the microphone, tight and sharp. "Ms. Thompson," he said, trying to sound calm, "do you have something to share?" Sarah stepped into the aisle, her sneakers soft on the carpet. Her voice was clear and steady, cutting through the silence like a knife. "I do, Greg," she said. "I want to talk about how the HOA steals homes." A huge gasp filled the room, like air being sucked out. People leaned forward, eyes big, mouths open. Greg's face turned pink, his hands grabbing the podium so hard his knuckles went white. "That's ridiculous," he snapped, his voice loud but shaky. "Sit down, Ms. Thompson." But Sarah didn't sit, she didn't even flinch. She held up her folder, thick with proof she'd collected for weeks: fake fines, forged papers, bank records showing Greg's secret accounts. "You've been scamming people for years," she said, her eyes locked on his, never looking away. "You faked fines to take my house. You did it to the Wilsons, the Garcias, and the Patels too." She started passing out copies of her evidence, handing stacks to the people nearest her. "Look at this," she said. "See for yourself." Pages fluttered as neighbors grabbed the papers, their whispers turning to loud murmurs. They read the proof: letters with Greg's signature, bank statements with big numbers, leases for houses that weren't his to rent. The room got louder, angrier, like a storm building. Greg's mouth opened, then closed, like a fish flopping on the ground. "This is slander," he shouted, his voice cracking. "You can't prove any of this." But no one was listening to him anymore. They were reading Sarah's papers, pointing at the numbers, shaking their heads. Sarah kept going, her voice getting stronger, filling the room. "You thought I was just a baker, Greg," she said. "You thought I'd give up, walk away, let you take my home, but you were wrong." She paused, letting the words sink in. Greg's face was turning purple now, his eyes darting around like he was looking for a way out. "I studied law years ago," Sarah said, and the crowd gasped again. "I never got my degree, but I learned enough. I know your tricks, Greg. I know how you lied, how you cheated, how you hurt people, and I'm not alone." She turned and nodded to the back of the room. 3 families stood up: the Wilsons, the Garcias, and the Patels. Each held their own papers, their own proof of what Greg had done to them. The crowd roared, shouts and yells filling the air. "How could you?" someone yelled. "You took their homes," another voice cried. Neighbors stood, waving Sarah's evidence, demanding answers. Greg's smug mask was gone, his face sweaty, his hands shaking. He tried to speak, but his words got lost in the noise. He looked small now, not like a king anymore. Sarah stepped closer to the stage, her voice loud and clear. "You thought we were weak, Greg. You thought we wouldn't fight, but we did. We found your bank accounts. We found your fake fines. We found everything." She held up one last paper, a bank record with Greg's name and thousands of dollars he'd stolen. "You're done," she said, and the room exploded with cheers. Greg staggered back, his eyes wild. "You can't do this," he yelled, but his voice was weak, like a kid throwing a tantrum. The neighbors weren't listening. They were on their feet, clapping, shouting Sarah's name. The Wilsons hugged each other, tears in their eyes. The Garcias held up their papers, pointing at Greg like he was a bad guy in a movie. The Patels nodded at Sarah, their faces proud. The whole room was alive, buzzing with anger and hope, all because Sarah had stood up. Greg tried one last time, banging his fist on the podium. "I'm in charge here," he screamed. But a man in the front row, Mr. Jenkins, stood up. "Not anymore," he said, and the crowd cheered louder. Greg looked around, his face pale, his smirk gone. He'd underestimated Sarah. He thought she was just a quiet baker, someone he could push around, but Sarah was smart, strong, and ready. She'd spent weeks digging, planning, building her case, and now in front of everyone she'd shown the truth. Greg's lies were falling apart, and it was all because of her. Sarah stood tall, her folder still in her hands, her eyes bright. The room was hers now, not Greg's. She shocked everyone, Greg, the neighbors, even herself. She wasn't just the nice lady who made cupcakes. She was a fighter, a hero, and she'd just changed everything. Greg's world was crumbling, and Sarah was the one who'd made it happen. By the time the HOA meeting ended, Greg Larson was finished. The community center was still buzzing, but now it was with cheers, not whispers. Police officers showed up, called by someone who saw Sarah's proof. They walked right up to Greg, their badges shining, and put handcuffs on his wrists. His face was pale, his fancy suit wrinkled, and his smug grin was gone. Neighbors clapped and shouted as the officers led him out the door, his head hanging low. Everyone in Willow Creek knew the truth now. Greg was a liar and a thief. The HOA board was shut down that night. All the members who helped Greg were in big trouble, facing questions from the police. Sarah's folder, packed with fake fines, forged papers, and bank records, started a huge investigation. The truth poured out like water from a broken dam. Greg had stolen thousands of dollars, maybe even millions, by taking people's homes.